Today's episode is an invitation, a nudge to remember that your voice is your power. I am joined by someone's very, very special to me, Nicole Recker. She is one of the bravest, courageous women who said yes to Collective Voices, which is a co-author book project that is designed for those that are ready to share their truth, to share their story. And in this conversation, we talk about what happens when you finally say yes to telling your story, the growth, the healing, the surprising opportunities that come your way when you stop hiding and you really lean in and you start speaking your truth and sharing your truth. And Nicole opens up about fear that comes from using her voice, and but also the transformation that came from her being part of Collective Voices and then going off and writing her own memoir, The Greater Plan. And I have to say, watching her evolution has been one of the most powerful reminders of why I do this work. And if you're listening and if you've been carrying a story inside of you, a story that's been nudging at you, begging you to be told, to be written, to be shared, I want you to know that you are not alone on this journey. Whether you are ready to write a book, be part of a future Collective Voices volume, or you simply want support in unlocking your voice, I'd love to be part of your journey in any capacity. And we do have a new round of Collective Voices opening in the fall in October. So stick around to the end. I'll tell you more about that. But first, let's drop in with Nicole and let's dive in. When you go beyond the surface and into the depths of who you truly are, you will rise. Nicole, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you. I know we're going to have a beautiful conversation. So first and foremost, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to prompt you with something first and foremost, and I feel like this is going to kick off our conversation. But when you hear the phrase, your voice is your power, what comes up for you?
Interesting. It almost seems like the metaphor of like peeling back the onion, and it really didn't happen all at once. Because the things that I had within my ears was really that what I had to say, people didn't want to hear it. What I had to read, people wouldn't want to read it. So those are kind of the things that I felt. I didn't really feel like, and even sometimes still, despite the things that I've overcome, sometimes I still feel like it takes me a little bit to have that feeling of my voice being heard, or like feeling like I deserve the space to talk. And one of the things that I feel really helped me was honestly, it was ever since like meeting you, because the first interaction that I ever had with you was that crafting your workshop. I look back on that and I am so massively grateful because of the things that unfolded. And I was terrified to do that class, but also just the thought behind like how much I've overcome or how much I feel like I've grown to be able to understand how much my voice matters, and my younger version, like what I would tell her now is this intense belief within yourself to understand that what you have to say can impact the world in such a positive way. And your voice, it deserves to be heard because of all of the things that really has unfolded since that first time I've ever met you.
Yeah.
The real life proof of understanding how powerful that is. And so much that I literally went into one of the newest places where both the books are going to be. And I sat down and I met this lady, and she says, I want to give you some motivational talk experiences. Would that be something you're interested in? And I'm like, like that makes me feel really nervous. And she's like, why? You talk so passionate about the things that you wrote about and your two books and your experiences, but it's still quieting those voices sometimes that can scream so loud of who will want to listen to this, who will want to listen to anything I have to say or will even impact anybody still happens, despite the fact that I've done growth. But when I was talking to this lady, she said to me, it really doesn't seem like it would be hard. And I said, because I've overcome those moments and I've seen these incredible things because I created the space of that vulnerable conversation and everything that flooded after that. It's almost like you take a rock into a pond or a lake or an ocean and you throw it in and it's this endless ripple effect, and it almost is so humbling to me. Even still, last week a random person find my Lead with Love book at one of the bookstores, and she messaged, and she's originally from the UK. The possibility of that can be so far in who you can impact.
I think it always gives me chills just witnessing, being able to witness from, like you said, that first moment. And to be honest, even for myself, I kind of was, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm very passionate. I think that's why we've connected so deeply, is because of similar journeys, in the sense of finding our voice, finding the power in our voice through simply our stories and our journeys and what we've experienced, and the passion that comes from being able to share it, and share it with people in hopes, and in, I guess, in some way, in knowing that something in it is going to serve somebody else, it's going to help someone in some way, shape, or form. I feel like that's where we connect so deeply, and there's such a deep resonance. I can think back to the people that unlocked that piece in me and saw it in me, and then it's beautiful, because then we continue to pass the torch on, right? And I guess in some way, shape, or form, it's, passing the torch to you, of just giving you the space, and then you've also passed the torch to other people that are on this journey, and that goes to show the powerful ripple effect. And also for us to be able to lean in even when it's a little scary, to say yes to, I call them the breadcrumbs, but these moments where you're like, I'm terrified to do this thing, but for some reason I'm feeling so called to say yes to this, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then so much more unfolds.
I think also you just unlock something just by saying that. Um, when you get this feeling, and I think it takes practice or trust in within you, like this intuitive feeling to do something. If you lean into that, magical things can happen. Because I remember I woke up out of my sleep the night before that deadline, and I was like, I have to do it. Andrew's like, you have to do what? Almost 10:30 at night. What are you talking about? And I was like, I have to do it. And same thing, just along the journey, there's so many things in between. My author talk as well. We pulled up. I was so pumped. This was my first experience talking in front of people other than online. And I looked at him, I was like, we can turn around now. I don't think I can win. He's like, yeah, that's not how it works. Like, you need these people to go in. But same thing, you feel the sensation, you feel the nervousness, you feel the butterflies, but you know the growth and the other side of that can come from it. And I think that that is something so simple to understand, but also can be challenging. And I think another viewpoint I use it from is there's a good old Franklin book that we read with Wyatt when he's feeling nervous. There's a part in there that says being brave isn't that you don't feel scared, it's that you feel scared and nervous and you do it anyways. And I think that that's one of the biggest reminders that I lean into is when I do feel nervous. It's a good sensation. That means you care, or
Of
you
course.
know, what you matters to you, and just give it your all at the end of the day.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
always, I definitely use that too. And I also, I don't know where I heard this, but it stays with me anytime I do feel nervous. It's our brain doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. And
Yeah.
every time I use that, it's so hard. I mean, even for me still to this day, especially more so when I have to step on the stage. I feel the nerves. I'm like, this doesn't feel like excitement right now. But I guess in a way, there's a little bit of that. But it does mean you care. And it means that you care deeply about what it is that you're doing. And I think it's a beautiful thing, because at the end of the day, I have never regretted, and I'm sure you could speak to the same thing. You've never regretted any of those moments where you were terrified to do the thing, whether it be like speaking in front of a group, getting on a stage, doing a podcast, saying yes to like being part of a book, you never regret it because of what happens and what unfolds within you. And I think what you said too is just this big piece around trusting ourselves too. And I'm curious, going back to kind of like one thing that you were saying, where do you feel like those little inner, you know, inner chatter has come from? Like,
Well, that's juicy. I feel there's multiple parts to that question. There is the side of the trauma that I experienced that I shared in the greater plan. It felt like to me it was too hard to sometimes use your voice. So therefore, keep quiet is easier with real life hard things. And I don't think there was any intent on that. It just kind of happened. I just feel like it just kind of subconsciously planted this little pleaser energy type. You just keep quiet and say what you have to say, but it was very limited in a sense. I don't know. That's the one side of it, but then also when I was older, it was grade 11 English, and this is what almost stopped me from publishing both of these books many times. Was my English teacher, grade 11, said that I had the writing of a fifth grader. Nobody would want to read what I had to say. So it just wasn't just a thought. It's somebody actually said this to me.
yeah.
Never pick up writing. So I did. I did all of those things. I just believed that. And I think that that's the root cause of it. So, yes, it was kind of planted as a younger child in a sense. I was a quieter one in the group if it was amongst people that were talking. I was never the first to raise my hand, because I didn't want to seem silly or ask a dumb question.
Yeah.
And then the older years, literally being told that, and so much to the belief that when I launched Lead with Love with you guys, that almost stopped me. And I look back of all of the beautiful things that came from this one yes. And it makes me so emotional because the moments of understanding how much your voice matters and seeing these moments unfold and what came from it and what still to this day is coming from these beautiful moments. Because of this one yes, I could just envision stomping on those times that I thought that my voice didn't matter.
I know it sounds cliche to say, but what I think about when I hear you talk about that, I think for me, I talk a lot about just breaking these cycles and breaking patterns, and that's what unfortunately these thoughts and even these beliefs that we create from scenarios, because I can resonate so much. It's not like I was getting 90% in English class. Like, I feel like a lot of writers resonate with that too. And so we create these beliefs. And so we have to do the work to undo all of these beliefs that we've carried with us for so long. And the more that we say yes to these really scary moments and the things that are really pushing us to go against that belief, that's where we're allowing ourselves to really break these cycles and break these attachments to these beliefs and finally start to let them go and create these new narratives. It was actually so beautiful to witness you inside Collective Voices, because I remember you talking about how one night the entire thing just came. It's almost like sometimes when we've been silenced for so long, or we've held in so much for so long, and then finally we're given this space. And I feel like it has to feel safe, and it has to feel like a right place for us to be our fullest self and be that vulnerable. And then what happens is it just completely like unlocks, and then the floodgates are going, and then we can't stop ourselves.
I really do believe that, like you said, you have to say yes enough to be able to understand that that's kind of the journey of it. And I think if something makes you so uncomfy, it is meant for you. If you're okay with growth, because I feel like this entire experience sent me down a personal, and I was doing personal growth before this, but you have to be okay to get so uncomfy and grow with this experience, because if you want to feel comfortable, I don't think that the most authentic version of you can come from that place. And that's my honest opinion. I feel like I worry sometimes if who's going to be the listener. Am I going to say something that's going to hurt them? Because I have also had those things done to me. It's never the intention, but I guess living through this life, we can't walk around um, thinking about what we are going to say, how it can affect somebody. Of course, you be mindful of that, but yeah, so from the other side of it, being so nervous and not being able to say yes, not being able to hear my voice, to be able to have the individual after we did Lead with Love send me a message and say that because she read my story in Lead with Love, she decided not to commit suicide. To be able to have that total flip of understanding, you
Mm.
can impact somebody in that powerful of a way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think being shown those things on the other side of everything, despite the fact of how much I have to sometimes quiet those voices, when you do get in those moments, you understand that it can be beautiful and it can impact somebody in such a positive way. And you never know who it's going to reach. You never know who's going to be 10 years down the way and be like, because you said this one thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we have to hold on to those moments too when those moments come, not because it's not going to come again, but it's because of the moments where we start to experience maybe a little bit of the self-doubt or the imposter syndrome. I remember 10 years ago now, I mean, that's when I started speaking, and I kept this list for myself at the front of like one of my journals, and it was, I think I called it my like fuel list or something, and it was just, I guess, like a constant reminder to always go back to this list, to remind myself of what I'm capable of, and to give me that boost when sometimes we start to forget, or the inner chatter starts to get a little too loud. We have to hold on to those moments, because sometimes the mental chatter, especially for us creatives, it can get so loud, and sometimes we go into these spaces and it's hard to pull ourselves out of it. And that's why I think it's always important to have community. And I'm thinking about why I love collective voices so much. It's just everybody who comes together, is everyone's on their own journey, but then there's like this connectedness, and also there's this beautiful piece of everyone supporting each other and lifting each other up. I think what I love so much is like the voice of women just gets so much louder when we all come together, and when we all raise each other up, and we all give each other the space to be seen and to be heard. And it's such a powerful experience for people to witness. And the more that we can put ourselves in those spaces, I guess in a way, the easier it becomes for us to continue to use our voice, to trust in our voice, to trust in what is coming through. And then the chatter gets a little quieter when we are in that space. We're living on purpose, we're living authentically, and we're living in that alignment with what our soul is being called to do. And I feel like I see that so much in your journey. Until this day, I still see you with your books in the bookstore and you having these conversations. And when I see that, and when I see you, it's like living in complete total alignment and on purpose. And yes, we're going to have the fears and they're going to be there, and yet we still say, I see you, fear, but I'm going to keep going. Like, and I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm curious, like, what were some of the fears that came up with sharing your truth? Because I mean, I know how deeply beautiful and vulnerable your chapter in Lead with Love is, and also your entire book, The Greater Plan. But if you can speak to what was that fear with sharing maybe your truth and your story.
My fear in most definitely sharing, it's so interesting because both books there were fears, but very different. The first was um, in Lead with Love. I was terrified that my experiences, my losses in pregnancy was going to possibly create this fear in another person. And I didn't want it to be a negative feeling. So I kind of feel like that was my biggest fear in Lead with Love. The Greater Plan, though, it was beyond petrifying because um, I shared something so deeply that nobody knew. That like I felt like I was opening my front door and just letting whoever wanted to come in. And I think I don't know, it was one of the hardest things that I had to overcome because I never believed that I could use my voice in certain situations. I didn't believe, or maybe it was that I believed that I could, but I was so worried about how this one would feel and how this one would feel and how me telling my truth would create somebody else to feel. I never wanted, the intention was never to let anybody, or the intention was never to let anybody be viewed to blame or that they did something wrong, you know? So it was, I don't know, it was the challenging journey, but the most like liberating and rewarding. And I honestly think that one of the things as I was listening to you talk, and it's going to get a little sidetracked, but when you were saying about like how you, you have to just quiet those voices, I think one of the biggest things that helped me through both of these and to be able to move through those things is that you have to be okay to grow and understand that there's things that are not going to serve you. And you have to be willing to let that go. Create this space for what is meant to come to you to be there, and you're deserving of that. Um, because I also would listen to a recording of a self image script. I did the entire mindset course in between Lead with Love and the Greater Plan. And my mentor made me record this self image script.
Mhm.
And it is literally like these incredible affirmations, and like I am talking to my future self in this recording. And I listen to that all the time. And I think it's like you said, like the community around you that you hold is the very thing that will be able to create this space for you to be pushed. And not necessarily by anybody else. It just means that you can push yourself because you know there's going to be people to support you around in those difficult moments where sometimes it's very hard to pull yourself out of. Um, yeah, I know that's kind of got sidetracked, but yeah, it was just a couple of thoughts that I kind of had.
I love that. I think that's a big fear, or yeah, I think that's a big fear for a lot of writers to overcome, especially because we are telling our story. And to be honest, I can't imagine a story that doesn't involve other people. Like there's always people that are going to be involved in us telling our stories. And I think back to what's interesting is, especially when I think about my book that I wrote, and my very first chapter was about my relationship with my dad. And what's interesting is I never even got to the point of being fearful or thinking, I wonder how he's going to react. And I always say this because it it was the intention behind how I wrote that specific chapter, or even just how I wrote the book. There was always this deep intention of love. And I think anytime I speak to people, and I guess for those that are listening to this and probably are thinking about maybe telling their story or in some way, shape, or form, like we can't get around that other people are involved in our story, but we can always control our intention behind things. And one thing, and I thought about this actually earlier, and it's coming up again, but one of the books, the first books that I guess sparked my whole like personal development journey was the Four Agreements. That book changed my entire freaking life. Essentially, one of the big things that I took away from that is just how people react is not in our control, and we can't control that, and it's not our responsibility. It's not even about us. And I think that's an important reminder as we go on these journeys. It all comes down to intention. I feel like if you have this intention of love and you're sharing it from your perspective, and I'm like, how can anyone even get upset from it? I think that's what I thought of with my dad. I'm like, there's nothing in here for him to even get upset about. I mean, it's not that there's anything he hasn't heard before. And what's interesting is I don't even think till this day he's ever read my book, and he can't even get past first couple of words. And it's
Mm,
unfortunate because I think about it, I'm like, if only he could get to the end of that shot. Like if only he could just see past that and get past that. He would just see like just how cherished. And it's just interesting, and everyone has their own journey, but I always think about that when it comes to that fear of like what other people are going to think. It's like your intention is so much bigger and is so much more powerful behind everything.
also too, like one of the things that I've got to experience is so I have my Wyatt is going to be Wyatt just turned 6 not very long ago. And when I did these books, I was going through like pictures because some of the bookstores and that, and libraries and this sort of thing that I'm a part of was asking for like certain images and stuff. And there was a picture of Wyatt holding the book with his hands. And because I don't post him anywhere on social media, just like, I don't want to paste his face, but his hand was holding the book. And the other day, he said to me, it was actually one of my day home crew, that he says to one of the little girls, my mama, he says, he calls me mama, he goes, my mama wrote 2 books. And he's like, do you want to know what? I'm going to write a book. And like, it made me uncontrollably sob because the saying of give your children something beautiful to imitate, like children are going to imitate something, so give them something beautiful or like powerful, to imitate. It just created this deeper understanding that not only am I affecting the people that I come into life with and on a regular basis, these author signings, these author talks that I'm doing, and the feedback and the connections that I build all throughout the world, the one that is the most dearest and will matter most is the one with my son. And for him to be able to like, I don't know, it's like that subconscious thought of his voice doesn't matter is never going to be there. And that alone is, beautiful. And I am forever grateful that this journey led me to understand. It's making me so emotional how important my voice is and how I told you I was gonna need this box of Kleenex. Yeah, and how much that by one person going through hard stuff and one person leaning into the yeses and being terrified anyways and doing it anyways, how much this sacred space gets passed on to so many others, and to understand how much of a positive impact this entire journey has been on my son Wyatt, to understand that he can do it and there's no limitation there, makes me the proudest of my younger self, because that wouldn't have happened if it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so what you just said that you're prouder of your younger self. For a second, I thought you were going to say proud of Wyatt. And I was like, no, I'm so happy that you said prouder of your younger self because it's all the choices that you made in our children. It is this direct reflection where we see the work start to create that ripple effect. And for you, like what you said about him, that thought of him never like questioning whether or not his voice matters is a direct reflection of mom doing the work and unpacking all those narratives and letting that narrative go, and we just see it unfold before our eyes within our children and within our descendants. And this reminds me of something that I read today in an email, and this beautiful woman who talks a lot about ancestral healing, what she shared was just how one day she's going to be the ancestor. One day she's going to be the ancestor for our descendants, and they're going to call upon her, and she's going to answer. And I just, oof, my body was just like, we're going to be that one day. Yes, we are going to be that, and we get to see that. And I think that's why, I think for a moment I think about, just where I was maybe like a few years ago, even during Lead with Love. I was going through a whole thing. Do I want to have kids? Is this in my life path? But here I am surrounded by all these beautiful moms. And here I am, a few years later, and I'm in this beautiful anticipation of when it's going to happen. And I think there's that when I sit with and I come to present moment, of course, those fears were just growing up as a child and what I didn't want to have passed on to my children. But when you like ground in the present moment, the fear doesn't live there, And I feel like
Yeah.
that we can take that even to with us as creatives who are going on these journeys of writing books and putting our story out there. It's like sometimes the fear comes when we're thinking so far into the future of all the possibilities and like what ifs. But if you can come back and just being in the present moment, there's lives so much love, and being in that space is really important. Something that Tina actually shared with me too, and it's always stayed with me, just like when you start to think so far into the future, that's where all the anxiety comes and the what ifs. But in the present moment, you can tap into just pure love and that gratitude and just presence, and that fear doesn't live there.
You know, of course, that I almost didn't publish The Greater Plan. And the cover is of the baby buffalo with the mama. And I remember talking to Alex when she did help me do this. And I had an email sent ready to go to you and Ashley, or to you and Tina, sorry, that I wasn't going to publish it. And I already told you the story. But I came down the stairs and I carry this little buffalo, and like buffaloes just mean a lot to me. And I remember coming down the stairs and I had this email ready to go. I told Andrew I wasn't going to do it. Well, I come down the stairs and he just looks at me clear as day, has no idea what's happening in my brain, and says to me, "Hey, Mama, you're a big buffalo because you're brave, and I'm a little one because I'm brave." And I remember telling Andrew, like, all the fears, all the things of me thinking that what I have to say doesn't matter. I'm trusting in that divine timing because how can you make that up? So I texted Alex shortly after that because it was only supposed to be the big buffalo. And I was like, girl, the little buffalo has to be on this book.
Yeah.
And I wrote it with the intention. I remember Tina saying, if you have your intention, like you said, really dear to your heart, and you focus on the intention of why you want to write this book, then the rest of it kind of just diminishes, like you said. Like you remember why you're doing this, and the fear can't really live in that present space, despite the fact of how stubborn it wants to be sometimes. Um, but I remember the whole purpose of me writing the greater plan was so that I could sign a copy, put it in an envelope for Wyatt on his like 20th, 25th birthday, and that was enough for me. And I dedicated it to Wyatt. And it says, to my son, for all the days that come your way, know I'll always guide you. And it's such a morbid way of thinking about it, but for some reason, I was terrified that if the universe has this other plan that I don't get to have these hard conversations with Wyatt, this book will forever be there. And I have a video recorded, like, of me signing it, and like I sent it to my sister, like all the things. I have it, of course. I pray to God and all the things that I get to be there for Wyatt's journey for as long as I possibly can. But it makes me so emotional to know that I did do it, and forever he will have that in words. And I think that, like you said, like when I don't know, the space of having a child, it really makes you lean into having to grow. And somebody once told me that your child deserves the best version of you. And no matter what you have to go through in order to get that, it is extremely hard growing. It is extremely hard, like you said, leaning into these fears, feeling the feelings, but trying to remember what you're going to get on the other side. It can be exhausting at times, but I think that when you really do, like you said, have that intention so dear to your heart, it's like treading water and eventually not going to be in the thick of it.
You said something very key of just always coming back to why. And I think having that is so core foundation. And that's the most like simplest thing. And it sounds so cliche, but it is the anchor. It is the thing that's going to ground you. It's the thing that's always going to bring you back, to just bring you back and be that anchor when the fears start to come up, when the doubt starts to come up. I was in this. Now, funny enough, I think about so many authors, including myself. I remember having that exact same moment too of saying, I'm not gonna publish this. No freaking way. And thankfully, I had my now husband, and he was the one who said, well, why did you want to do this in the first place? And I was like, got it. We're good. And it immediately was a moment where it pulled me right back to the moment. And I was like, I I have to do this. And again, I always think about, it's kind of like what it became a trend like recently around like social media, but like the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
So many butterfly effects from me sharing my story and saying yes and saying, you know what, the first speaking engagement and then saying yes to running my book. It's like the butterfly effect. If I didn't do any of those things, I'm not even sure where I would be. Right?
Yeah,
It's wild to think about that.
it
And
is. It is
we
crazy.
don't know what's going to unfold when we say yes. We're just thinking of it, sometimes it's just, hey, I feel like this just feels really good and I really want to do that. Great. If that's all that is, then perfect. Just watch what's going to unfold because it's going to be a shit ton of things that you don't expect. Just prepare for that.
So juicy. So juicy. And you know what I think also too is like I have healed so many parts of myself. That doesn't mean that I'm still not human. And one of the beautiful things that I learned from writing the greater plan as well as Lead with Love was just because you move through things, just because you heal from certain parts, I am still triggered by many things that I have written about in this book. And the things that unfolded after launching this one, I have been told by so many people I can legit write an another book just off of the things that I've overcome just recently. But what creates from that is similar to what you said before, like that imposter syndrome of understanding that I don't get this metal armor just because I did this hard thing, just because I showed to the world that I can heal from these moments. So what kind of created this massive imposter syndrome, I think, and it still goes to show, and this is why I'm bringing it up, it still goes to show that those voices still come up. Just because I move through it in Lead with Love and Greater Plan doesn't mean that I'm still not moving through it. So I think also to the understanding of that is, yeah, it's just you don't get this metal armor because you've moved through a couple of hard things. But that going forward of understanding that as much as I've trusted the things and I can see physically with my eyes, the things that I trusted in the past to align so beautifully, to understand that the things that are coming for you in the future also will align and not a second sooner than what they're meant to be. Despite the frustration, despite the anger of why it's not coming to us fast enough, all of these things, we just
Mm.
create our own resistance. But the imposter syndrome that I felt after doing the greater plan was that I actually found what created this grounding moment so much for me is coming back and reading my own words through some of the, and I thought when I wrote this book, I thought, I said to one of my counselors, I thought I had life figured out. I thought I was like, nothing else terrible could happen to me. I was so wrong. I was so wrong. But one of the things that I think keeps come back to me is that I do go back to these younger words, and I think that was a gift I didn't know would come from this. I thought that it would just benefit Wyatt when he was older. And
Mm.
to know that I found these beautiful growth moments in some very tragic spaces. Yeah, it was, I don't know, it was like I could have this younger chat with my younger self, and still can anytime that I want to pick this book up. Just because we move through these things doesn't mean that we don't have moments. So, like some people I find when you listen to a podcast, they'll be like, oh, well, you go to the comparison scenario of
Mm.
I didn't have these hard things. I didn't have that life. How can I do XYZ? We're all just human beings trying to live this world the best that we can. And of course, knowing me, I share all of the things very vulnerably, like, usually crying on all aspects of life. But it's because of that, right? It's because of understanding that when I create the space to be so vulnerable myself, it allows somebody else to think or believe that their voice is also deserving to be heard. But I also scream that from the rooftops,
Yeah.
um, because of how much growth I've seen and because of the beautiful moments I've seen on the other side of that. And it was all really because of you at the end of the day, that crafting your workshop. As I'm getting ready for this evening, I was like, I cannot believe, but I am also so grateful that somebody introduced me to you and all of these other things unfolded.
Yeah, there's so much in what you just shared. Again, I feel so aligned with so much that you shared because I felt so similar even after my book. Like this is it. This is my healing and it's done. And oh boy, were we wrong. But what I want to say to that, because sometimes that can be something that becomes another boulder that we pile on. And it's another reason why we're not going to do the thing. And it's another I'm going to say excuse for lack of better words, but it's another boulder that's in the way, another thing that we're saying, I can't do it because of this. And yet, just the thing that I offer is that, like you said, we're human and we're always growing. And that means we're always evolving. And what a lucky thing that it is that we get to have that and to experience that. For me in my book, it's like I often share how that was a version of me that I almost don't recognize anymore. It's powerful to see almost, we're going on like essentially 8 years later. It's like, wow, so much more has evolved from it. But I wouldn't have the confidence or even just that excitement to share and write a second book had it not been the first one. And so it's the exact same thing. Sometimes we have to get the first thing out so that we can get to the next thing. And as writers, you have to get the first draft out. And that's why I always say the first draft is for you. You got to get through that first. That has to
Yeah.
come first. There's so much that is sacred about writing a first draft. The messiness, the rawness, the realness that is in a first draft, which but then that allows us, right? It allows us to get to other parts of it, but we have to go through all the different phases of it. We have to experience. Unless you do the first thing, unless you take that first step, unless you do the first thing, you're not going to get to the other place that you're so probably desiring to go. It's
Mm.
again, we have to go through the steps of it. And I think that can be frustrating at times, but that's where the magic ends up being, is in that process. And so when we start to embrace that process, that's where, like we keep saying, the juiciness starts to come out of
Yeah. And it doesn't happen any second sooner than what it's meant to be. Because I literally said to one of my clients the other day, if I was to look back from before I launched even Lead with Love or the Greater Plan, if somebody was to say to me 2 years prior that, all of these things that have unfolded, I would have laughed at them and been like, you have no idea who you're talking to. You have the wrong person. But really just trust in that divine timing. When it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
and so grateful as always to have been able to share this space, to share this conversation, to shed light, because I think the more that we start to recognize the power in our own selves, I think that's what I think about when I think about our voice being our power. It's in ourselves. It's seeing the power within ourselves that we have simply by being us. There's nothing outside of you that you need. And there's so much power in simply of who you are, what you've experienced, and just knowing so deeply to your core that it has power to serve someone else. It has power to serve you as well. And it's such a beautiful thing to be able to, when you get to experience that and you witness that. And I'm really grateful to have like witnessed you in your journey and just seeing it. It's so beautiful to watch it unfold, and I'm so grateful that you continue to say yes. I feel like that's where we're so aligned, is just we say yes to the breadcrumbs, and when it feels aligned, even though it feels scary, we're like, yes, we're gonna do it.
Well, and also too, if you or I didn't say yes to the things that we said yes to and understood that our voices matter, like all the people's lives who we wouldn't have impacted. So I think sometimes if you view it from that aspect of understanding, like whoever is listening, like if you think of, if you trusted in you and you trusted in divine timing and you trusted that your voice did matter, the people that, like, you are doing yourself the disservice and your purpose on this world by not using your voice, because the people you can impact just by you believing in yourself. And if you decide to use your voice in the way that is meant to and feels most, like you said, aligned within you, um, yeah, you can change the world, and it doesn't have to be a monetary value. It can just be, yeah, you change the world by being the most authentic version of you. And I think, yeah, that's kind of, as you were talking, it's just, I couldn't imagine if you didn't do say yes to the things you did, because look at what it achieved for my world. You are tossing this little tiny gem into this open water, and it will affect people that you may not even ever get the chance to meet in the physical person. It may be on the other side of the world. And I'm so grateful that you said it yes to all the things you did, the way it's impacted me. So you just have to believe that somebody else later down the way will say yes, and it will affect that. Like I said, there's an endless ripple effect.
Whew. The conversation gave me chills, and Nicole's story is truly proof of what can happen when you stop waiting for the right moment and you really start honoring the call to speak and to share and to tell your story. And it's a reminder that every time you show up with vulnerability and truth, you create a ripple effect. You make it safer for someone else to do the very same thing, and that's the real revolution. And if Nicole's journey and her story stirred something in you, if you felt that tug in your gut that's whispering, maybe it's time that it's my turn. Maybe it's my turn. I want to invite you to reach out, to connect with me. Collective Voices specifically is more than just a book. It is such a sacred container that I co-create with my soul sister Tina Adoricio, and it's really a space that is a creative rebirth in many ways and a reclamation of your voice. And I'd love to welcome you inside of our next volume, our 6th volume of Collective Voices. We begin in October. There are still limited spaces to be a part of it, if that's something that you are feeling called to. And feel free to reach out, to connect with me, send me an email, send me a DM, jump on a call, get you part of Collective Voices. All the links are going to be down below. And I just want you to remember that it's your turn. So keep writing, keep speaking, and remember that your voice is your power.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.